Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another one-man review. Today, I'm going back to a type of book that I had done a bunch of reviews on, and I just haven't got one of these in a while. So we're coming back to books that gotta be books, is what I used to call them, but now we'll start calling them thanks to the chat I just had with my friend Brian Davis, who's a scholar that studied these kind of books. We'll call it a multi-modal book, which is what comics are from the get-go. But a multi-modal book is something that really involves more than just language. There's like a design and visual element to it, and especially if there's something in the construction of the book that contributes to the meaning of it, that's of particular interest to me, and obviously was enough interest to Brian that he actually got a doctorate in it. So if you haven't watched that chat with Brian, we talk a lot about this book, NOX by Anne Carson, as well as the works of Mark Danielowski of House of Leaves fame, who was, as far as we both could tell, like the person who really perfected this and set the standard for these kind of projects. So this is a big piece in a box. And I'll be honest, right out the gate, I didn't really like it. I really like the design aspects of it, or I like what it could be, I guess, but I don't like what it was. What it is Anne Carson's brother had fled the country to get away from going to prison, and they hadn't heard from him in many years, and contact was always minimal. And she got a phone call from a stranger that said, "Hey, I know you don't know me, but I'm calling to tell you that your brother's dead." And it turned out to be her brother's wife that was calling. He had gone to Norway or Sweden or somewhere like that, and married a woman and had a life. And she called to inform Anne Carson that her brother had died. And so she went there, and this is like a journal that she kept while she was there. Now, the actual structure of the thing, initially, I believe her initial thing was just a little chapbook notebook that she had, and that's reproduced really well here. They get these pretty good scans of it. They're a little blurry. They're definitely not the best scans, but they're pretty good, and it's a good facsimile of what this thing looked like. What I especially like is that a lot of how she treated the pages, she kind of abused them, and so you see these wrinkles. There's things glued to them that causes wrinkles, and they scanned them in a way that you can see through. Even this right here shows up here on the scan, and you can see the photograph here showing up underneath that. So it gives a real tactile sense of what the book was like, and that's one thing that Brian talked about, is that this is a book as an archive. It's an archival project that has a lot of different materials in it, and multiple modalities. There's writing, there's cutouts, there's drawing, there's paintings, photographs. So multiple modalities of communication. On the back of this box, it says that they worked real hard to represent the original artifact as close as possible, which to me doesn't make sense. This is a replica of the book I made for my brother, as close as we could get. Now, I think it would have been more interesting to reproduce this as, take the money that went into this production, because this is like a $50 book to buy, and recreate the original chapbook with this material here and the actual canvas tape on the side. That would have been cooler to me and made more sense. My problem with this book is that it's got this accordion structure, and as far as I can tell, unless I'm just being overly gracious with my interpretation, there's no real reason for this, and there's nothing on the back. So a lot of these see-through things could have been made interesting, to look on the back. The only thing in a gracious interpretation I can make of that is that she's talking about the emptiness on the other side or something like that, the other side of death. But I don't understand the decision to take this little notebook and turn it into an accordion. And when you're doing a project like this, the form of it really has to contribute to the meaning, in my mind, to justify doing this at all. Brian argued that it made it unwieldy to read, and that there was something about that, about grappling with death maybe, but I didn't find it unwieldy to read at all. I just held it like this in my lap, and I could just flip the pages like a book. It just made it bigger, and this whole big in a box and everything makes it seem more important. I get the idea of like the tombstone or the urn, that kind of thing, but I think you could have still had a box, and the like actual notebook in it, and then maybe like some, if you're gonna have a budget to make something like this, maybe print some of these things out and actually make it more like like an archive of actual materials. So I just didn't understand the material choices, and that was really frustrating to me because I was really excited about the book and it looks cool, and I assume someone's gonna do something like this. There was a really deep reason for it, and I just couldn't suss it out without coming up with something that I felt was being an overly gracious interpretation that didn't really work. Then the actual content of it, I also found just like really thin. I read it in about 20 minutes, an hour. I don't know. It was a quick read. I started skipping a lot of it because it was just a lot of definitions, like of words, ancient Greek words. In talking to Brian, I realized again I'm being a sloppy reader, but there's it's this poem here, this that's being translated one word at a time, and then in the end you get the actual translation of it, and this is just like an elegy poem, and that's what this whole thing is. It's an elegy, remembrance of her past brother. But it was just like with struggling with and thinking about all of the accordion nature of the book and stuff. I wasn't in the mindset to also be trying to like put together that all of these definitions were a translation of this poem and making sense of that. Once Brian told me that, I didn't really have any desire to go back and reread it with that in context. They're just dictionary definitions that are cut out. It almost seems like she's making them up to try and expand them. I'm not sure where they came from. But then the rest of it is just these really short, like little bits of almost prose-ish, poetry-ish prose that just, kind of talk about her brother, kind of talk about the history of elegy and things like that, and where this poem came from. I don't know, they're just these little statements that seem like someone showing off about how much they know and trying to seem smart and creating this whole thing, and I guess this is how Anne Carson dealt with it, but it didn't, like, nothing in here made me like feel like I had lost a loved one. Nothing made me feel like the author was really grappling with losing a loved one. It just seemed like someone who spent too long as a academic in literature, like trying to show off how well versed they are in things and trying to be clever. And I don't know, it struck me, the whole production of this thing struck me as like, I'm going to take this small little thing, personal thing that I did for myself, and make it look bigger and more important than it really is. I do like where they, like this kind of collage stuff. I like the potentials there of mixing words and images in a different way. The only things I could find that justify having this stretched out version is there will be these folded pieces of paper, and so they'll scan it from the front and they'll scan it from the back, and you'll see the same page twice. And so in that sense I can see the accordion, and then they'll unfold it and you'll get these scans where you have the black of the scanner and the book and the hanging off, so you get these pages. But like, I'm not sure that's, and it's not even lined up across the gap here when they flip it over to the other side. So I don't think that's enough to justify this. The money would have been so much better spent actually like just having that bit of loose paper printed as close as possible and sticking it in there like they did in S. Like, S is a $40 book. I know it's J.J. Abrams, so there was a lot of money behind it, and this is a small little art book, so there wasn't money behind it. But if it's gonna be, if I'm gonna pay $50 for a book, I would have liked for that kind of trickery to be in place. And then maybe I would have felt more emotionally attached to it. But I was so emotionally removed by just this structure and trying to figure out why the book was like this that I couldn't engage with the more interesting content. But even the writing itself I didn't find very interesting. So I figured I'd review this book because me and Brian talked about it. I spent $50 to get it. I'll probably be trading it in at Second and Charles. It's really big and unwieldy and takes up a lot of space on the shelf. You know, you can see it's a big book. And I don't really want that eating up space. It wasn't compelling enough as an object for me to want to keep it. So I don't know. I'm sorry to crap all over it, but maybe this will keep some people who are interested in this from buying it. Or, you know, if you see it and you're like, hey, you know, that guy didn't get it, but that looks cool to me, then yeah, go out and buy it. It's a interesting project to grapple with, but I wound up not liking it in the end. One of the best ways that you can support what we're doing here on the channel is to support the books that Sean's putting out through Living the Line. The first book that he put out is The Strange Death of Alex Raymond. It's a collaboration between Dave Sim and myself. The book was recently nominated for an Eisner Award in the Best Reality-Based category. It's a deep dive into the artwork and methods of Alex Raymond and the mystery surrounding his death in a car crash. So if you haven't grabbed that already, please do. There's also Yokoyama Yuichi's Plaza, which is a totally intense manga by an artist who has somehow figured out how to distill manga down to its purest essence. This book was successfully funded on Kickstarter, but if you missed the Kickstarter, you can order it through any comic store, any bookstore, Amazon, any place that you would normally get your graphic novels from. The Abolition of Man is a 5-issue mini-series done by myself and Sean in collaboration with the Midjourney AI. What you're seeing here is the cover to issue 1 and the first couple pages of issue 1. This first issue, we fed it an essay by C.S. Lewis, and this is just the imagery that the computer spat back at us. Issues 2 and 3 are a narrative, starting with the story that I wrote when I was 21, and then Sean's going to write issue 3, picking up where I left off. In this one, I'm kind of trying to force the AI to give me the images I want, and then doing some tweaking in Photoshop to get these kind of colored looks on it. For issue 4, we're turning the task of writing over to the AI as well. So the AI has written the script, and then we've just put that into the Midjourney AI, and it's turned out art. The script and the art is some of the absolutely most horrific stuff I've ever seen. We're a bit scared to even publish this issue. And I don't have any art to show for it yet, but Sean and I have decided to do a 5th issue of Abolition as well, because we have someone who we're really, really excited to have on board, providing an essay for that 5th issue that we'll illustrate, and we'll announce more about that soon. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jet.